Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all over the world, my name is Brandon, aka Rags to Riches. And always, as always, ladies and gentlemen, I have no earthly idea why you're here right now. Maybe it's because WaLLrus will be here. Maybe it's because we're going to be talking about liquid loans. But certainly not because of me, JB. What is going on, Hex Hodl? I may watch this if nothing else is on. I guess just for the outro, really. He Likes the Blues by John T. Graham. Red Squirrel, oi oi. Nice to have you. Facing Reality. Boom. What's up, Facing Reality? Taryn, this is going to be good. I'm pleased with liquid loans and excited for the Earn protocol next year. Pulse Chain Trainer. Loving my LP award rewards. Aspiring to be a loan shark. Godfather J6. R2R Vipes. R2R Texan. What is good? This crypto guy. What's good? Hex Force 1. Sup Rags, nothing else better to do. Slow at work, but still saving lives. All right, guys. Dejan Dougie Peach, we call him the Charlotte Houdini in the house. Vets and Crypto Peeps, congratulations, Brandon, on the donation drive. Guys, if you didn't know, I starved myself for 72 hours. I looked into the abyss. I got sucked in, but I was able to pull myself out, and here I am right now. We made it. Good stuff. Raised about $3,000, and we are currently actually putting that money to good use. I will update you on that. Guys, this stream is for liquid loans. And, as always, I've got some disclosures here. Hope you're doing well. Not really. As most of you are aware, I have interviewed numerous projects over the years, primarily focused on Pulse Chain, the Pulse Chain ecosystem. While some of these ventures have successfully reached the market, others unfortunately have not. It's crucial for me to emphasize to my audience that when I conduct project interviews, my main objective is to have project owners and project representatives express their successes or express their failures and put it on the public record. From a selfish standpoint, this allows me to engage with a lot of these folks. However, my ultimate concern lies in covering accurate information and providing people with the opportunity to do what? Form their own opinions. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine giving somebody information and allowing them to form their own opinion? It's a weird concept this day and age, folks, but that's what we're doing here. I believe it's essential to offer a platform to builders who have been active in the community for some time. Hope we can break down some of the barriers of information and eliminate a few of the gatekeepers that still exist within our community. It's my sincere wish that regular community members seek truth independently. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I have not been paid for this stream whatsoever. I'm doing this out of the kindness of my cold stone ginger heart. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you now to the man, the myth, the legend, the WaLLrus. What's up, dude?
Man, that guy was here for the outro. That was a hell of an intro, man. Just come in with straight heat. I hear you, man. Good to be here.
Man. We got to set it straight, man. So, dude, I don't even remember. I guess the last time I streamed with you was with Crypto Cabana. I mean, we hopped on a couple streams back then, right? I think.
Yeah, actually, I think the last one was with Cardone. Weren't you on that with us? Me,
yeah.
Both Garys?
Right. Yeah. That's right. I think I was. Yeah. It's all blurred together, man. This bear market. How about this bear market, man? What's going on with all this, dude?
Woo. There's man, this one has been so crazy. Beyond all just the crypto side of it, there's been this, I can't remember who said it originally, but they use the term cross current. Like you got all these, you have a set of indicators that just tell you, hey, the world's over, stop playing. And then you got a set of indicators that are like, hey, we're breaking through. This is about to be the crypto renaissance. That's the one I think is the most indicating thing to me about the bear market, man. Like there wasn't the no zero talk. It was just, is it just complete financial ruin for the entire world, or are we all going to explode and go to $1 million of Bitcoin? It's the cross currents, man. It's insane.
Yeah, I think I made the switch from thinking that I knew everything this cycle into knowing nothing, because nothing makes sense. Upside down, up is down, down is up. In the traditional financial system, all the indicators show that the whole world should be burning right now. I guess in some ways it is. But the Fed comes out, they say they're going to cut rates, 3 times pretty soon here. And Inflation is coming down, but they're doing things that contradict their statements. It's an upside down world, man. What can we hold on to and moor ourselves to, Mr. WaLLrus?
Where to begin,
Right?
man? The thing, something. This was something. I think it was originally brought up with when Trump was actually campaigning. So this would have been like 2015, and somebody who I would say is probably pretty close to your disposition, pretty well thought, not very hyperbolic, was like, man, I love that Trump just freaks out about everything. Why? Like, that's not your demeanor. And what he brought up was that he basically like broke the status quo. Like, everyone's kind of, oh, this person should do X, Y, Z, and then they shake hands afterwards, right? But he turned up the dialogue so hot that, like, now when you listen to anything mainstream, the things these people say is completely broken. Like, no rational person believes anything any of these mainstream sources are saying. And I think we've seen a handful of different people, voices, actions over the last few years that have just broken those mainstream narratives. There are more people talking about the Fed and Fed rates than ever before. Now, again, a lot of it is just because, again, this is the first boom for a lot of people. If they're, 25 to 35, kind of that range, maybe they just weren't really around enough to care about 2008. But like Fed rates, man, like that stuff's getting talked about everywhere. Like you see Fed rates discussions on TikTok. Like people got so broken through that mainstream that now they're actually having real discussions. Now, again, most of the general commentary is completely ludicrous, but at least they're talking, man. And I think that the institutions have lost so much faith that I think people are starting to roll into some autonomy, and we're starting to see some genuine pushback. So that I'm pretty bullish on. I'm bullish on some of the stuff that you guys are doing at Texan, and just that type of thought. Just Is this really the way it is? Is it just because? Is this the only standards? Is the only thing we can do? There's no alternatives. Like, people are chasing alternatives, right, and trying to sort through things, man, in a pretty powerful way.
Yeah, from my perspective, it seems like prior to this technological boom that we've seen maybe over the past 30 years or so, there were very few gatekeepers. And the problem with that was the pipes all led to one or two people. But now with technology, you have the ability to be able to kind of break free a little bit more, especially from a financial standpoint, and not have to worry about pissing off the powers that be, because you have opportunities to make money elsewhere. And how ironic and how funny it is that billionaires were the people that turned this whole world upside down. When, for example, the political left, they hate billionaires and they say billionaires are horrible, horrible people. And I'm going to tell you something, I think that Twitter doing the 180 that it did is really the mark of a brand new age in technology and society moving forward, because it's not necessarily completely controlled like it was before, with all that crazy information that came out about how closely tied, the FBI was and DHS and all that was with Twitter. It's horrible.
One of the most interesting pieces, you kind of highlight something there. You said billionaires and left. When did that happen? When I was growing up, the left wasn't the rich ones. They were the tree huggers that were poor, and it was the rich Republican dads. That was kind of one of those jokes. What happened? One of the craziest things, and it's just kind of, we don't want to go all the way down, but it's a rabbit hole I think people would find interesting. How did that switch? How did the Republicans all of a sudden become these, like, the rednecks of Trump, and all their degens, and they're dumb, they're this, that, and all of a sudden the left is somehow this rich, sophisticated billionaire class? When you look around some of the things around 2008, you're one that's, I think you've highlighted before, and when you look at inflation, it affects the people closest to it the least, or even positively. It's the people at the end that it affects. Where did that inflation come out? You look at the places where most of the money comes from, New York, LA, these centers that are financially closest to all that inflation money. They're blue as can be. And then all of a sudden, 2008, money printers kick on, and all of a sudden the left's billionaires and the right are the poor conservative guys. Funny how that works out, huh?
Yeah, it's funny. I think the right actually has some connection back to the healing power of the Constitution. When I say healing power of the Constitution, I mean that, America isn't perfect, But because we had that document, we have been able to right a lot of wrongs. And I think that the left has completely thrown out the idea of the Constitution. They want it to be a completely living and breathing document. They want to change it. They want to bastardize it. But I think that the right still believes in it, and I still believe in it because the amount of wisdom that was put in those papers was unimaginable, man, absolutely unimaginable. I want to stick to it. So I think that this conversation is going to be cool because you guys, Liquid Loans is really spearheading what freedom and sovereignty could be with the advent of a stable coin that's collateralized by Pulse Chain. Now, I just said a lot for some of the people in chat. Maybe some of you folks don't know about Liquid Loans yet. So maybe WaLLrus, just kind of tell me about Liquid Loans, man. What is it? Why is it important to the Pulse Chain ecosystem?
The first part I want to touch a little on the culture side quickly, and it'll naturally roll into to some of the stuff we're doing at LL. I think one of the things that's really powerful about crypto is, in general, of all these things, people simply don't feel powerful. Like they're getting bullied. I mean bullied everywhere, right? Not just in a immature sense. They don't feel like they have say in any of these institutions. They don't feel like their vote counts. When you look at a lot of just social metrics in the West, they feel unhappy in relationships. People just feel like they don't have a say. They don't feel like they have a say in their own homes, in their own worlds. Crypto is bringing back autonomy. It's having power. If I lose my keys in crypto, that's my fault. If crypto goes up, that's my fault. Whatever I participate in is what I participate in. And I think the idea of just sovereignty is part of the allure of all the things that we do in crypto. Now, it obviously has effects where, again, when we pull out those middlemen, that friction, that corruption, it has a lot of downstream effects, big gains, all kinds of things. But I think some of it just comes culture. It's just, that's mine. Like it's as close to just true ownership as you have anymore. And that resonates with a lot of people. And I think that's why you see some of that 2A red meat on the right tend to be more pro crypto. And you're seeing it in places that want to push real capitalism. Crypto kind of goes hand in hand with that thing, whether it's El Salvador or Singapore, Dubai, some of these places, again, and none of these places are perfect, but it just goes into, that's mine. Like I want the autonomy. If it goes wrong, it's my fault. If it goes right, it's my fault. And if it does nothing, that's my right. If I want to sit there and throw the keys away, that's my right too. So I think autonomy and just taking back some of that power, just in any way people can anymore, especially I think for males with some of the stuff going on in the world is massive. So when you look at things like LL, it's able to take something that would be seen more as a commodity like PLS that people on Pulse Chain agree has value. You need to use to do different transactions and ride on the chain and have your speech or transaction displayed and engaged with. And it allows you to take that and then mint a stable coin. So stable coins have a lot of different utility in different places. It gives that means of exchange. It's a way to be, risk off and not have exposure to certain prices. So bringing it all down to a simple level, it allows you to collateralize that PLS. So again, this is simple DeFi, right? Like DeFi stands for decentralized finance. Lending is one of the simplest things that goes on in finance, and you want to have those assets and those tools around, and you want other people to, right? More efficiency, more financial tools, even if you choose not to engage with them for your own skill level, your own rationale. These are plus EV, plus expected value in ecosystem. So LL allows people to take zero interest positions. It allows them to mint a stable coin. There's different yield aspects to it. But I think the biggest part is no admin keys to anything. The vaults are individual. It allows all these things to be, that's your vault. How you handle it is up to you. And again, add some of that power back and allows us to do some of the things we would do in traditional finance without having to ask. No credit scores, no permission, no KYC. And there's options down the road. We can talk some about the KYC. I think no KYC is slightly misunderstood and overstated in crypto, despite being someone who truly believes in privacy and your ability to do things without KYC. But there's a lot there. So I think I said enough. You can pick which thread you want to pull on.
Wow,
from there.
dude, I love it, man, because you're just teeing me up. I don't have to stretch here. So
Pick a thread.
We'll go back a little bit because it all ties together very well. the thing that I like about cryptocurrency is for the first time in many, 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 many decades, people are reminded that freedom does come with responsibility, right? And sovereignty does come with
Mhm.
responsibility. I think people make the mistake of saying, oh, you want to be freed and sovereign, but if you lose your money, there's no customer support number to pick up. And I'm like, well, think about what happened before this technological revolution. And people were storing their value in vaults, or they're burying their money in the ground. And in some ways, that's kind of archaic. But in other ways, you sure wish you had the ability to do that when things get really, really weird and governments get really, really controlling and they start clamping down on their people. So one of the biggest things that I kind of like about this protocol is that we have the ability to take responsibility and relearn how to take responsibility and be accountable for that as well. I think that's extremely important. The other thing that I wanted to point out based on your commentary, um, if you have a solution and you don't know whether or not that solution would work on a big scale or whether or not it would be competitive on a large scale. What I like to do is take that small solution. I like to, in my mind, blow it up and scale it out and make it seem like it would be used on a global level. Then I ask myself this question: would traditional finance support this or reject this protocol if it was actually competing with them? In my mind, WaLLrus, they would reject it, and it's because it's so powerful. What are your thoughts on that statement?
I mean, one, I agree. There's a poor incentive structure with the way a lot of these things are built, and it's one of those natural, like this is a very like order versus chaos. The issue you have with when you start to have institutions, they add efficiency, right? Like everyone here, if we all wanted to, even look at things like DeFi, if all of us have to sit here and all write a piece of the code, this ain't going to end well, right? Like we have places where you want centralization. We want the best devs to write code. We want these people to do these things that they're great at. We need enough decentralization to basically achieve a goal, right? And so that's how these things are incentivized here. But as soon as you have an institution, they have a self defense mechanism. They're already wanting to defend themselves and hold on. And then again, at some point, they can get corrupt. So that incentive is naturally starts to get corrupted the second that it adds strength. So doing things in DeFi allows to fix some of those incentive models where you don't have to have friction in gatekeeping. And you see this in all kinds of places. But one of them, I think, when you said bring this up at scale, there's certain aspects of all these things that like things have a certain place, right? So in LL, it's over collateralized. Why? Because crypto's volatile, and because the point here is absolutely about safety and the stability of USDL. Well, it's also inefficient, right? Like that's capital inefficient to be at 110%, or how most users would be, which is substantially higher. Overall, in the total collateral in the system is like 200, 220 last I looked. So that does have some handicaps, but it gives us a ton of robustness and resiliency. So it works very well for doing what we're doing with it, right? And the way it'll scale on Pulse Chain and similar style ecosystems. But fractional reserves is misunderstood because all we think about is the modern, like very perverted version where it's an absolute train wreck disaster that barely even goes into what it really is. But fractional reserve makes sense. Like there's the answer to a lot of these things is fractional reserves adds efficiency. So there's places where it makes sense. So I think that's one, just as someone to kind of write home and go do some homework on. The over collateralization is not capital efficient, but it adds robustness to the system and makes it safe. And if you look at things that are fractionally reserved, they're more efficient, more capital diverse in different ways that they can do things. But you have to trust them and you have to make sure that things don't break. So I think to your point about scaling it up, there's a lot of ways that it makes sense using it the way we are, where you have a lot of value to be locked up. And you also have other avenues, right? So use the right tool for the right job. So there's a lot of value in always having a tool like this present. And then there's places to use fractional reserves or other variations of DeFi lending as well.
Yeah, and Yeah, and maybe it's not meant to scale up to that level. Maybe it's meant for communities like this. Maybe it's meant for blockchains and to be able to service that. And the
Mhm.
reason I say that is because you go back 60 or 70 years, a big company comes into town, or maybe not even a big company. Company comes into town. Maybe there's like 20 to 30,000 people. What do the doctors, the lawyers, and the accountants do? They get together, they pool their funds together, and then they create a community bank. Okay. So it's for them. And there's resiliency in having all of these kind of small satellites that are serving individual communities. And there is pushback against centralization when you have so many doors and windows open to financial energy, I guess you could say. And what we saw during this bear market, we saw an absolute crash. We saw a murder scene in terms of local banks and even some regional banks. And then we saw a reconcentration of capital energy, financial energy to these large centralized entities, the JP Morgans, the HBC, all of these folks out there are stronger than they were before COVID, and everybody else under them is weaker. And they don't care about the small guys. They act like they do. They don't. This was very, very evident to me, WaLLrus, when I saw Jamie Dimon and Senator Warren uh, locking eyes with each other and lying to the American people live on air. I just couldn't believe what was happening there. It is a relationship. It is a romance between the federal government and the large banking entities. And over the next 10 years, if there is not some sort of free market solution, just like we have with liquid loans or any other DeFi product out there, if we don't have solutions, they're going to keep going. And if we don't have options, they're going to keep going and they're going to gobble it up. What are your thoughts?
The issue with a lot of this, the US has so many rules that people don't even recognize most of them as rules and think that they're like what am I trying? How am I trying to express this separately? People treat them like they're rules of physics, not man-made rules. There was someone who made a reference earlier that said he was obviously being sarcastic, but he said, Senator Warren, I don't care if you make a law against gravity, people are still going to fall down the stairs. And I think that that's where people don't understand. They do, when you look at laws, especially ones around finance, and you add things or change rules for smaller banks or larger banks, like you're playing with physics. Like these things don't happen in one way. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to reduce gravity because I want people to be lighter. That ain't all that's going to happen. So now there's so many levers and there's so many layers to all this modern financial system. Most people do not even understand which part of it is rules versus which part of these things are actual like market economics. Like they don't even know how to separate them, right? When you look at some of the things, I was in the auto business for a long time, and I remember looking and seeing like, does anyone ever realize like how come Toyota, Ford, Chevy, how come they can't sell direct? Because it's a law. There's rules put in place around. There's a variety of different reasons why it went on the time around unions and different things. But so when you say look at the price of a vehicle and it goes up, we just think inflation, right? We don't even see the inefficiency about how they're able to sell direct, right? So there's an artificial layer there that's adding to the cost. That's why when COVID and this supply chain shrunk, that's why these guys were selling way over stickered, because they couldn't be competed with, because Toyota and those guys couldn't sell direct. And you see this layer after layer after layer where people don't even realize when we get to a final price, they don't even realize how much value has been extracted by different rules. And it's not just inflation. That's the easy one to point to. They can look at inflation or devaluation of the dollar. They don't even realize how many things and how many different financial rules are stacking that cost. Like that is not what stuff cost. And you see this everywhere. There are different rules. That's why Tesla doesn't have dealerships. They have galleries, because they'll show you and then they have a different way you can order and process. That's because it is illegal for them to sell directly to you inside of states. No one ever thinks about that cost, and that goes on everywhere. And we don't realize how these things keep expanding. And it starts as like this quilt of bad laws and bad rules that are outdated, and people take advantage of things. And a lot of these things are also counterintuitive. This is a funny one. Again, you don't want to get down too specifics, but I bring this up a lot, that if you want to see where things are going or where the cutting edge of things are, is you look at drugs and pornography, look at online payments, advanced forms of video, all these things, tons of different economics, ways to solve problems that come from those places. And if you talk about things like the southern border in the US and you said, hey, what do you think the cartel boys want? Do they want it open or closed? Almost intuitively, you're like, well, they want it open. They want to be able to move their stuff through. They want it closed because they don't want you to get your stuff through, and because it artificially raises the price because there's a supply constriction. So when you close a border, you make the price of those things go up. And maybe we don't want those things in, but that same type of market mechanic happens everywhere in these systems, where somebody adds a rule that they think is positive or they already know from the beginning, and we don't even realize that that's artificial inflation on a price. We think that's just what stuff costs, and it happens at every single level all the way until finally you're handing inflated dollars to somebody.
Yeah, it's like at each level, it's a bunch of crack addicted bureaucrats or lobbyists or companies that just want their cut at each of these levels. And then who gets the shaft? It's the consumer. It's the folks, the hardworking people. And also, it does not help that we have the Federal Reserve System that's completely out of control. And nobody on Capitol Hill has the balls to be able to the political balls to stand up, because they're afraid. They're afraid of being ostracized. They're afraid of being blacklisted financially. They're addicted to the inflation. You know, you said something earlier. I was listening to the radio, and there was a company that got on, that was on the radio, and they said, we have these brand new plans to open this multi-billion-dollar center in Alexandria, Virginia. And they're going to have a Wizards facility. It's going to be 9 million square feet total. They're going to have a gaming facility. They're going to have a conference hall. They're going to have practice facilities. They're going to have restaurants. They're going to have Gucci. They're going to have all of these things. And if you look geographically speaking, wherever politicians are, that's where things explode. And even to the point you can travel through any small town in America. And if you travel through any small town, what's probably going to be some of the nicest buildings in town? It's going to be the post office, and it's going to be the federal building. And
the government and the church.
The government and the church. And then also, look at even the police cars, right? All these tax dollars going to cop cars that serve 5,000 people in a small town, and this vehicle's $100,000. When, hey guys, by the way, all you need is a bunch of Crown Vics and radios to solve these problems. And humans, for some reason, man, when they have agreements amongst each other in a governance setting, they bless themselves. I guess maybe inadvertently, or they feel backed up by everybody else. Yeah, let's give ourselves a raise every year. Or yeah, let's build this $50, $100, $200, $1 billion center, and screw these tax dollars, and we're not going to have any accountability. And then all these cuts happen, and it also is very obvious that our current situation, just like you said, there's so many levers. You don't know what's market mechanics. You don't know what's not. It's teetering on the edge of collapse. And when you think about that, these financial entities in the West, they have got to clamp down. They have to account for every dollar coming in and out of the system. They have to have more control as time goes on because their system becomes more fragile. So that's why, Venmo, $600. Oh, you better report that. We need every tax dollar. We're going to squeeze you for everything, and we're going to shame you if you don't. So it's cool to see decentralized finance just kind of growing and evolving and bringing this into Pulse Chain. I think it's a very, very positive thing. I'm curious to see what you think Pulse Chain could look like in the next 5 or 10 years.
A few of the things that are wild. So this is the stat that'll be really cool. So they actually refer to them as troves on Liquidity on ETH. When I last looked, they had about 875 open troves. Now, again, I'm cherry picking this out of it because this is about participation. That's
as opposed to what? Troves opposed to what? Wallets? Vaults, I mean, rather, yeah.
So they have it was just under 900, it was like 875. And again, the TVL substantially higher. Of course, it's ETH, all those things. But I'm looking at participation, right? So they've been around 3 years and they're on Ethereum. They have about 875 troves open. When I just checked, we had 820 vaults open in 14 days on Pulse Chain. So is the TVL there? Chart. We can go down some of the number side, but look at the amount of DeFi users. Like Pulse Chain's not close to the size of the user base of ETH, 2 years, 3 years and change versus 14 days. And the amount of people actually using the DeFi protocol is already almost the same. Within 30 days, it'll clear that. That's insane. Like that's mind melting, right? There's all kinds of other positive things, but like that's what participation looks like. There are people who I'm working with who are replacing mortgages. They're already, they were waiting on this. I spent time with them before launch and during, and they basically took a position. There's a few different things they're going through to make sure they can off-ramp it and everything correctly. And I'm going to follow, we're going to do some content on it, but they're going to replace their mortgage. They're going to go ahead and pay off what they have and basically manage the position in LL.
Now, so let's back you up there. Sure. So for folks out there, you're saying that these people have some sort of crypto collateral, for example, sure, and they want to use liquid loans to be able to use that instead of traditional banks to be able to get USDL out and then use that for their mortgage moving forward. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. They're going to off-ramp the USDL. They'll go through whatever that person's means are of off-ramping, and then they'll pay off the mortgage, have it clean and clear. So they'll have no traditional finance lending product of any kind there. And then they're going to choose how they manage it through LL.
So they own the collateral, and instead of paying the mortgage company, they're going to basically pay it themselves. They are their own bank.
Correct.
That's powerful, dude. That's
now
powerful.
Again, I'm slightly cherry picking. Now again, you'd have to have the collateral on chain. There's a variety of different reasons why it's applicable, but like that's real. Like this is like I've said this a few times on a few different areas around Bitcoin, around DeFi as well. There's a lot of things we've said were true about crypto that weren't true when we said them, but they're true now. Oh, decentralized finance can do X, Y, Z thing. Not really. Mostly it was a good reason, a good narrative on charts in 2020. Like that. We can call a spade a spade. That's what most of it was at the time. That stuff is changing. There are countries that have it as legal tender. There are countries that part of the thing that we saw with El Salvador with their recent update on the Freedom Visa, it's not even just Bitcoin. They're taking USDT as well. So a stable coin, right? A stable coin is being able to be used for a licensed government program to acquire citizenship.
Can you talk about that a little bit more in depth about what that actually is?
Sure. So there's a variety of different citizenship for investment programs that you can do them a variety of ways. Turkey has most of them have a few different options. Typically, it either goes around holding funds in a bank, just do a straight up donation, purchasing real estate, stake in a company in a few different places. And again, they're all just ways to bring in capital for places, especially if they're not all that competitive. So the Caribbean islands, Egypt, Jordan, and the big one that I'm referencing now is El Salvador. So El Salvador already takes Bitcoin as legal tender. So you spend it just like anything else. It's just money. They are dollarized in Bitcoin. Those are the two legal forms of payment in El Salvador. So they have a new program where it's pricey. It's $1 million. But the two ways you can actually explain that is that you can literally pay that sum. There's a few caveats there, but you can pay that with Bitcoin and USDT. So again, I don't think that it's especially a competitive program yet. If you're actually looking at using it, I'm more looking at as like, hey, the writing's on the wall, right? Crypto's won, guys. Like the idea that crypto won't be around, it's not in the cards anymore. It's what does crypto look like? And is it going to be FedNow CBDCs, or are we going to be able to push hard enough on all these DeFi and distributed systems to where they can run parallel? But if you look at the Freedom Visa, again, you can use USDT or Bitcoin to pay and acquire citizenship and move your entire family to a country now. And you can do it entirely through crypto.
So what sort of advantages, what would push a family to want to move to that part of the world and go through that process? What would you say?
So one of the things with citizenship, it depends. It's a variety of different things for people. So the $1 million, maybe that's out of the cards. You can go substantially cheaper. And I believe it's a 5-year time frame if you actually want to live in El Salvador. But the reasons that people do these things are the first one for U.S. based persons is you are taxed on citizenship, and that happens almost nowhere in the world. So depending on where you are, you have to go through, you have basically still have to deal with U.S. Taxes, including I forget the guy's name, the British Prime Minister who
Yeah.
was an act. There's a
The new
term called
financial.
accidental Americans,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So a quick little rabbit hole. There's something called accidental Americans for the crowd here. So if you're born in the U.S., you're a U.S. person, and then if you leave and go back to your native country, so you're traveling, all kinds of reasons, right? You can leave at 2 or 3, never had a passport, never lived here since you were basically 2 or 3, and then all of a sudden you hit it big somewhere, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, you owe us money." That happens. It literally happened to the British Prime Minister. He sold a house at some point, and they're like, "Hey, you owe us money." He's since then relinquished and went on. But so for Americans, the first part is wanting, again, they want to change things up as far as being able to live other places. And if you want to live outside of the U.S., you can have issues with basically being taxed in both places. So there's a lot that goes on for Americans, but for the rest of the world, maybe something goes on like the big flu that we had a couple years ago, and one passport is treated different than another. People want to be able to do different things in different places. So one of the reasons it's competitive to have something like El Salvador is then you have one in Central America, and you have different rights inside of that country. If you do things in, like, one of the reasons that Egypt is popular is because Cairo has a lot of like Middle Eastern money, and because now you have an African passport. So as you scale up, there's a variety of reasons for people that are moving around. But one of them is if you have citizenship in somewhere else, it can allow visa free. So again, if you were Russian right now, man, that's been a pretty tough road, even though you had nothing to do with that. You could just be Russian living somewhere else. And if all you have is a Russian passport, then what's going on in a place that you have nothing to do with? And maybe you've been gone for 10 years, maybe gone for 20 years. Maybe you're a Russian descent because that's where you were born and left and never got another citizenship wherever you've been. And now you're having to be Russian. That's not fun. So there's a variety of reasons for people around the world, but essentially it comes down to optionality. It can be for tax incentives. And it can also just be this. I can't remember who says this, but what are the chances of all the places in the world that you were born in the right place and that it's still the right place?
Yeah. Oof. And keeping in mind that you got to be on this earth for 80 years and things change. That too.
So, like, one of the things for for the U.S., there's it almost always starts with money, but money usually is justified through culture and other things. Like, it's more expensive to live in LA. Why do people pay for it? Because they like LA. It's worth it, right? So for a lot of the people that are moving around, it's usually both. It's usually that, hey, I don't want to be extorted for all that money, and I'm not happy with the culture, right? So one of the things, if you're a younger male, is to look at the passport bros. It's kind of a funny little movement, but it just has to go with the way the American culture has kind of alienated a lot of young males, and they'll realize they go other places in the world and they're much more conservative, much more on board with whatever it is that they're into. Myself, I'm very, very conservative on a lot of those things when it comes to family and taking care of things. And there's just places in the world that just may resonate with you more, right?
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to find a girl to get married to, and she doesn't have pink hair and a bull ring in her nose. That helps too. But that's me. That's not WaLLrus guy.
Well, and the thing with, sometimes this can always sound like it's like U.S. hate. It's really not. I mean, a lot of the people that I'm referencing here that might want to do some of these citizenship things or are using DeFi, hey, they got blessed by the U.S. and the U.S. is what got them to give them their opportunities. But now, again, the U.S. just kind of evolves and changes, right? Maybe maybe the place that you grew up. This is something I've talked about with my family a bit. 2 generations ago are military. The next generation all have degrees, and then me and my brothers are mostly entrepreneurs now, doing different things. And so the U.S. has treated my family very, very well. It gave us all the opportunities I would ever ask for. Now is where we have some issues. So this isn't and again, it's culture things, right? Like I happen to love a lot of the areas in Texas, as I know that you do as well. And it's treated me and my family extremely well. And there's just always these options and different things that people want to do at different stages of their life. So you can talk about how other places are great. And this is not meant to throw shade at anyone who's done tremendous things in the U.S. for the U.S. hasn't protected, or, especially veterans and that stuff. It can be very fickle with that. You can speak on these other truths and talk about great places, and it does not have to be disrespectful or anti-U.S. in any way.
No, you don't throw away all that stuff. And Here, the issue that we have, it's with the people at the top that are making these decisions. That's the fight that we're having. And in the fight that I wish we would stop having as much is the fight with our neighbors, because that's
100%.
exactly what they want. This is just a play out of the playbook. It's divide and conquer. It's get people so riled up to the point where they just feel disenfranchised and demoralized, and in finding somebody to hate instead of the source of the evil, which is at the very top, which does lie with the government at this point. We're, they say late stage capitalism, whatever you want to call it. I think it's just on long enough time horizons, humans do bad things when they're bundled together in decision making groups, it seems. And the banks, I think that's an issue too. So yeah,
Well,
I
that,
totally relate with you on that.
and that's why, something, it can, stuff starts with small stuff, right? JP has that, like, make your bed in the morning, clean up your room kind of things like DeFi. Just, it doesn't take all that much, man, to get people sparked. There's a lot of just amazing people in the world that are just weighted down, right? I would say depression. I don't even just necessarily mean emotion. I just mean depressed in a variety of different things, whether it's economic, relationships, actual depression. Doesn't take a lot, man. There's a lot of things that spark stuff up. There's people, in the community that have done a lot of cool stuff that I reach out to and speak to, that speak to me. And just sometimes, man, I bring this up, that this community is really, really good about gratitude. I mean, again, everyone gets turned up here and there, but they're very strong on gratitude, as I'm sure you felt as well. That gratitude goes a long way, man. Just that stuff just gets you up in the morning and wants you to go do great things. So that stuff's really powerful. And you get DeFi, you get some control, you feel like you have some sovereignty. Maybe you see some gains and you just think, hey, I can level up in the world. That's all it takes. People just need to know that stuff's possible, and it's amazing what they're capable of after that.
Yeah, is when the market needs a solution. I think that cryptocurrency was just developed at the absolute perfect time, man. Can you imagine if this hadn't happened in 2008, and we wouldn't be where we are now, especially with the Microsofts of the world and all these folks that are in bed with the government, and all these bad things are happening, and there is no alternative. Thank goodness for technology for that reason alone. Thank goodness for the proliferation of being able to communicate with anybody in the world. Barriers are brought down. We have to have that sort of thing. Communication is so important. That's why free speech is under so much scrutiny and attack right now. So, dude, I totally love that, man. Love everything
There's
that you said there.
there's I think we're to your point there, we're at an inflection point, and this goes back to, like, the mailbox. Like, knocking over mailbox was like a federal offense. Like, it was, again, it wasn't really, no one was ever really held to that standard, but it was on paper, it was a big deal to go up to read mail, to go through communications. That was not a small thing. That was a very large thing. That was a big deal, and it was stated that way for a long time. We 100% gave that up when we went digital. Like, email surveillance, all these things are completely at a scale that was, never even thought of at that time frame. I think we're at another spot now where, when we went from mailbox to email, we gave up a ton of rights very, very quickly, because things move fast. And we're in that same inflection point. We have a tool here that can do a lot to radically change individual people's sovereignty. And if we give up unhosted wallets, uncustodial wallets, this is a line in the sand. Like, people need to defend this. It is an inflection point that I don't want to sound too, like, I don't mean it quite as dramatic, but I'm doing this to emphasize it. Like, there is a non-zero chance that if we don't defend the ability to control transactions and have custodianship over our own funds, we may not see it back in our lifetime. Like, I think it's that big a deal. Like, it is a line in the sand. Most of us here now who are kind of boots on the ground, whatever reference you want to use here, weren't around for that line in the sand sort of moment. It moved too fast, and it was too complicated when we saw that change from physical to digital. But this is another one of those inflection moments. This stuff needs to be defended for all of us to be able to just have autonomy over our own thoughts, expression, and our assets, man. Like, we may not get another shot anytime soon.
Dude, and I'm going to use the word they, and I hate when people use the word they, but let's just specifically let's talk about the World Economic Forum. These people have an outline and they have a plan, and I don't even think I was about to say they disrespect us so much. I don't think it's about that. They put all of their plans online. They put all of their timelines online. We know what the CBDC was for. We know why they want to penetrate cabinets in all the Western countries and all the banking institutions. And it's because they want ultimate control over the world financial system to be able to partition resources and allocate resources everywhere. And they want the say. They do not want you to have the say over your own money. Okay. They don't believe that you can make decisions better than they can make decisions for your money. So it's crazy that it's all out there. It's crazy that you say that because it's so true. They just realized that so many people are asleep that even if they saw the information, they wouldn't know what to make of it. And they're certainly not backed up by anybody that could research it, like the media. The media is now a propagandist arm of the government all across the world. So there's no backup there to be able to translate it down to whittle it down to the basics so a regular person can understand. So here we are with decentralized finance. I don't want to come across as a crypto bro. I understand what we're up against, which is the most capital ever to be accumulated in human history is in a very small handful of mega corporations that have the advantage of not dying. It's because when their CEO dies, somebody takes their place and they take all of the knowledge that they had accumulated for 120 years prior. They have access to be able, the resources to be able to hire all the smartest people. They can research and they can buy up companies that are in AI and this. We are against an absolute titan of an enemy. Okay, I'm under kind of, I understand that. But I also understand this. Really, really good things can happen when good ideas hit the marketplace at the right time. And especially when people are feeling disenfranchised, they will take that idea, they will imprint it into their brain, they will plant it, and that idea will grow into an oak tree. And if you do that with enough people, with enough motivation, whether that be motivation because they feel like they're being taken advantage of or they don't have power control, that grassroots type of thing can turn into really, really cool stories in 100 or 200 years. And I think that's where we're at right now.
With a long enough lever, you can move the world.
Yeah. So, and it's our WaLLrus. I think it's your responsibility. I think it's my responsibility. I think it's the responsibility of the people in this community that have been given access to the information that we understand. You're now a steward of this information, and it's almost a responsibility to pass it to as many people as you possibly can, because the world literally depends on you talking to somebody else about this. And I hate to say that. I don't like to blow things up like that, but it literally depends on that. You guys, I would say 75% of the people in the Pulse Chain community could sit in a room with doctors, could sit in a room with lawyers, financial folks, whatever. They can talk intelligently about what real crypto is. It's just a regular person here on Twitter. They would be able to know more. They know more about it than most people do. So with that said, that comes a very large responsibility. That's what motivates me to show up. That's what motivates me to talk about things. That's what motivates me to find people who defend freedom and sovereignty and then be able to give them the gift of the blockchain, i.e. Texan.cc. This is what's important. If I go away, I want seeds that are planted that will grow and germinate and sprout and do really, really good things way beyond when I pass away. So
there's people underestimate or overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year. And that type of like consistent, as you said, like the tree won't grow in a day, but it won't grow at all if you don't start, right? And there's all these different places where we can see these things really push through certain tiers. There's breakpoints on some of the stuff. If we keep getting these things out, again, it doesn't have to again, in this conversation between like some of the CBDCs and, it doesn't have to overtake them. It just has to have a strong enough option, and that will affect how they have to act, but then also give people who who have the sovereignty and choose to do these things. And I think this is reflective at every level. So one of the current issues that I think that we've got to get straight in the community, we're arguing about something really stupid, and it's the IFPS front ends. It's this: do you want it decentralized and safe, or do you want it, very onboarding friendly? Both. Build both. Mm-hmm. Like it's not one or the other, right? If the option was, hey, they're going to hold Argentina pesos or Bitcoin on Cash App, I'll take Bitcoin on Cash App, right? Like that is a step in the right direction. They're paying attention. We'll move them on. Now, again, eventually, I would like to get them all the way into doing the things we talk about with DeFi, but I'll take anything in the right direction. So, this isn't either or, and that is the stupidest thing for us to be arguing about. We can go through and say, hey, does it make sense for the official front end to be this way or XYZ thing? But we can build both. That's no problem. Like both options, right? We can make sure that we have the most secure way for users to be able to participate, and then we can build beautiful onboarding tools that allow people to get exposure. Both of these things they're not mutually exclusive ideas, and this is everywhere. Part of the idea of crypto is allowing the most amount of people to do what they want as they choose to be able to interact with these things as they choose to. So, some of us are going to be using VPNs and Tor bots and going through all these things because we're capable of doing that. But we got to give everybody else a leeway to get into these things like this, like the whole decentralization of the spectrum. So is onboarding and everything else. And we have to be able to not, miss the forest through the trees a bit on some of these things. So like that, I think that's another example of this either or. We can do both. Like they do not have to be mutually exclusive ideas. And I think that's the same as you sort of, go up to the 30,000 foot view with DeFi. Just people having options is enough. Like that is a huge step versus having no options, and then having better options is a big part.
Love it, dude. And just kind of build on top of that, man. When I see this community infighting, in a way, it just kind of makes me smile. And the reason is because I understand that this is what the process looks like. You put something new out there. Most people are very against anything new. They're very against change. And you have a discussion and you chop it up and people call each other names. And after the dust settles, what has actually happened? Well, in this instance, if you don't like it, then you can go change it. You have the ability to go do things on your own. And you don't have to depend on one person to do it. And all that back and forth, that's important. That's part of the process. So we can't get so pixelated that we don't see the whole damn, Mona Lisa or whatever you want to call it here. And I'm happy because this is part of the process. I understand that this is what it looks like. It's evolution, not revolution, until it is. And then and that's what we're doing. Financial revolution right now, and it's absolutely amazing. Dude, we've been going at 54 minutes, man. That felt pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a good vibe. Did we talk about LL?
I think a little bit.
Yeah, we sprinkled it in, man. No, it's a good conversation. Can you give us, I think these are valuable. I think most of we have different people that have like very, very acute information to offer, but I think where me and you kind of land on a similar spectrum is like we're just trying to offer some lenses to look through these different things and take what you like and reject the rest, right? Maybe there's just one thing that we go through and you're like, okay, let me think through something else with a little different thought process, or hey, maybe that makes a little more sense here. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is just give that expansion and let people make their own decisions. Just try to offer something of value,
Yeah. Do you ever take a step back and you're like, how the hell did I get here? How the hell did I get to this point, dude? Isn't it crazy?
Yeah, all the time, actually.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things like when you're just doing the next thing that kind of makes sense, all of a sudden you look up and you have no idea, how, like you said, how did I keep getting here? Right.
I think when you keep doing the right thing, thing takes you pretty crazy places. So, I think that this is right. I feel right. I feel like there is a dragon that absolutely needs to be slayed. And I feel that stewardship of that knowledge that needs to be passed down, and I've got to talk about it. And I'm the type of person that loves to punch bullies straight in the freaking nose, knock teeth down throat. I love that sort of thing. So that's what I'm doing right now. It's important to me, and it's important for the world. And And quite frankly, it's important for my children. That's a whole brand new perspective that we could put into it. So,
Sure.
so let me ask you this, dude. In terms of liquid loans, okay, if somebody wanted to really understand what it was, if this piqued their curiosity at all, where would be step one for these folks? What would you say?
So we have tried to make as many tools to make things that are very intuitive. So I would first start with opening up the app and just taking a look at it. There's a product tour in the right corner. I always get it wrong. It's 27 or 29 different steps, and it will just almost like if you open up like an RPG game or a standard Web 2 app, and it'll just walk you through and tell you what all the buttons do and what you're looking at, how to add the contract seamlessly. There's 6 different videos in there, and there's a 4-minute walkthrough explainer, and you can just touch it, get a good view there, look at a handful of these different things. And then on our website, we have a start here function. So you can go start here and it will just walk you through all the blogs. Like we have a ton of content. So most people have some idea of some of it. They just need context, right? So they've done enough crypto. They're just trying to figure out how to use the system. They kind of understand the system, but they're off on this, or this, or they're new to DeFi. And I think that in some ways, it can be complicated. Don't get me wrong, but liquid loans is also it's pretty vanilla, right? Like it's lending, right? It makes sense. Like like people understand loans, they understand interest rates to some degree, and you can look through and work through these things, and you just basically start to fill in your knowledge gaps. Something else that we built that's kind of cool is there's actually a quiz on the website, and it's a 50-question quiz about the protocol, and you can literally go through and see which questions you got right and got wrong, and then go through and fill in the gaps on where you actually miss. And you can actually see what it is you do and don't know about the protocol. There's in the right-hand corner there, that's the LL librarian. That is the AI assistant that we've trained. And we're still playing with things. So if everyone wants to use that, give me some feedback, let me know. But there's an AI assistant that knows the answers to LL questions, will give you directions to different content, answers to certain questions, a lot of, again, extra expertise there. So there's the knowledge base in that bottom left-hand corner. I mean, it's all there. Like every tool you need is there. Obviously, we have tons of help in the Telegram and other spaces, but like there's just an absolute avalanche of content to go through and understand.
I said, who is WaLLrus? WaLLrus is the head of growth and partnerships for liquid loans. Outstanding. So I'll give you guys credit here, man. I think that this is probably the most robust and well-designed website that I've seen on PulseChain. And I think it's been that way for a while. So big props to you about that. I think there's plenty of opportunities to learn about this. And I'll tell you this, even if you're afraid of something like this and you feel really new, you can go on testnet and you can kind of learn this stuff, and you can go through the quizzes, and if for nothing else, you're going to learn just another aspect, another spoke of what decentralized finance is. So important to point that out there. And so anything else that you would like to add here before we hop off?
It's gonna be a little meta, but I think again it kind of gets into some of the discussions that we're gonna have, because we're gonna have a lot more of them, right? We're hardly finished with this experiment and the ecosystem, and more tools, more things to get built, especially in the bull run and numbers go up and all these things. There's a Shakespearean quote that I always liked. I'm using it improperly, but I like the way it was written. It's when Brutus and Caesar, he says, "It's not that I love Caesar less, it's that I loved Rome more." And I really like that quote. And so if I'm only Hex, I'm only Pulse, I'm only Bitcoin, I'm only whatever it is that you're only, by all means, stay in your lane, love your thing, hold your asset, but make sure that you don't hate other things less, right? Make sure that you give these other things a chance to flourish. And again, if you don't want to use them, by all means, if there's something that's actually malicious, by all means, highlight that. But an ecosystem means everything, right? Like you want these tools around, you want good projects, you want strong voices, even if you disagree. I disagree with people all the time in the system, but I agree with most things on them, right? So I don't want to burn them down every time we have a disagreement. So just one of those that make sure you're being fair in criticisms, because everyone's trying to solve these things, and most of us do not have the answers. I think something as simple as proof of stake, proof of work, we do not have the answer yet. I don't think we have that fundamentally figured out about how these things will be in 10 years. So if we don't have consensus figured out to where we're 100% certain, then we don't have anything else figured out. So let's I mean, you want to be safe, take your time with all these different tools and applications. Don't chase shiny things, but give some of these things a fighting chance. Like, let's build cool stuff, man. Like, everything but the chart, I think, on most of these things in Pulse Chain right now are fantastic. Like, we're growing. There's more education. There's more cool stuff. There's more projects. There's more avenues to learn and do cool things. So I'm very excited about what's going on.
Well, WaLLrus, thank you so much. Chat, you heard it here. If you're listening to this later on, I don't like you. WaLLrus might like you. Thank you so much for hopping on this stream, dude.
My pleasure.
We're going to take you out here, and liquidloans.io. You can also follow him is it at WaLLrus, 2 L's, correct, on Twitter?
On Twitter, it's WaLLrus with 2 L's official. And then on Telegram, it is WaLLrus with 2 L's. But I always tell everybody, go to like the main Liquid Loans chat. There's too many issues with the 4 million different scammer WaLLruses and all that kind of issue. So come to the main chat. Always be careful on Telegram and those things. Watch out for scam links and stuff like that. So yeah, WaLLrus, the way it's spelled there on Telegram, and WaLLrus, the way it's spelled official on Twitter.
Thanks, dude. We hit an hour here. Thank you so much. Yeah. We'll take us out. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all over the world, do not like, comment, or subscribe. Ciao.